Chapter 17. An hour before the mesmerizing gigantic tree crushed the kingdom of Tredera's castle, Trevin and Gatria entered the palace using one of the abilities of Trevin's soul shard, invisibility. It was an amazing ability that could not just conceal them from everyone's eyes, but also block the sound. However, there was a reason why Trevin didn't use it often. Other than it could kill him if he used it excessively, it had a limit to two persons, himself included. Having two abilities in one arcane weapon was pretty rare for a descendant of Saphir. That's why he was famous for it. However, because of his preference for a partner, he was shunned by his own people. So many. Trevin looked down at Gatria, who was in his arms when her voice reached his ear. They were invisible to the people outside, but they could see each other just fine inside his shield. Gatria, are you okay? He asked in a low voice. And no. She grimaced at her stuttering, weak voice. It was only thanks to Trevin that she could enter the palace without worry. He had carried her the moment her cloak stopped working, and the effect of the moonlight stones bombarded her body. There were too many moonlight stones inside the palace. She could feel it rapidly draining her that it had become hard to speak even just one syllable. But that's not what was worrying her. It was Trevin. Trevin was starting to feel hot. She knew he was overdoing it. T-Trev. She forced herself to speak. Why you? Why you're H-hot? Trevin pretended not to understand what Gatria meant. I have always been handsome and hot, he said as he ran toward the main palace's back entrance. There were too many guards, all using a moonlight necklace. Trevin could feel his body getting hot, just like what Gatria said, and he was starting to sweat. It was an indicator that he was using his arcane weapon's ability too much, but he continued running while his eyes swept at all the guards they passed by. There, he quickly approached the captain of the guards who was giving orders to others. He waited for the captain to be alone before he spoke in a low voice. I'm with the Krahika of the Temple of Nadi. These were the words he, Gatria, and their allies in the palace agreed upon to introduce themselves. The eyes of the captain of the guards widened when she suddenly heard a voice when there was no one around but her, but immediately composed herself. And without saying a word, she turned around and walked toward the back entrance to the palace. Trevin silently followed. Not once did she speak or look back, even though she couldn't feel any presence from behind her at all as she walked toward the safe room everyone had prepared for the queen. When she arrived at the empty room, she entered and left the door open and immediately kneeled on one and bowed. Trevin followed the captain of the guards inside the room and closed the door behind him. He was not surprised to see the phoenix kneeling on one knee even though Gatria still hadn't shown herself. The phoenix race had been a supporter of the Ither Kingdom and a zealot believer of the Mistress of Flame and the Mistress of the Wind. They were few in numbers. That's why they didn't usually venture out from their domain to protect their home and weak young ones. But Hakarin, that crazy warlord, pulled the Phoenix race into his plan. Only a few were allowed to leave their domain, only the warriors, but it was already enough help. Trevin canceled his invisibility. The moment he and Gatria became visible, the captain of the guards, Plume the Phoenix, spoke in firm, earnest voice. Greetings to the Mistress of Nature and Her Highness Queen Gatria. Greetings to Lord Trevin Vethier. I, Plume of the Phoenix race, will lay my life on the line to achieve victory tonight. That made Plume emotional, and she couldn't help taking a peek at the Queen of Ither who could command nature itself. Queen Gatria was beautiful and serene even when she was pale due to the moonlight stones. The queen smelled like spring breeze. Even in her weakened state, Plume could feel so much life from her. So this is the being blessed by a deity, Plume thought. She was already an adult when Ither was sieged, and out of the 4 queens of Ither, she had only met one, Queen Solal, the mistress of flame. The Phoenix race was an ardent supporter of the mistress of flame and the mistress of the wind, but if asked whom they felt closer to, it would be Queen Solal. It was because of her destructive flame. The elders of their race called the mistress of flame the embodiment of the deity Igni's flame. And now that Plume was in front of another being blessed by deity Natty with nature and life, Plume could feel it. Queen Gatria was overflowing with life. Maybe if the queen wanted to, she could be nature itself. No wonder her blood was so potent that it could prevent the barren land from devouring the capital. Trevin put Gatria down on the nearest chair before helping her put on a new cloak made by the king of the druids. Feeling better? He asked. Gatria fixed her cloak. Yes, my essence was drained, but it matters not. The whole capital is overflowing with my essence. She looked toward the phoenix, who was still kneeling. Plume, you may stand up. Yes, your highness. As Plume stood up, Trevin turned to her while slightly opening the button of his shirt, hoping that it'd lessen his body heat. The essence Lord Hackerin asked you to prepare just in case. Do you have it now, Lady Plume? Of course, Lord Trevin. Plume walked toward the corner of the room, picked up a medium-sized crate with ease, and brought it in front of Gatria. Your Highness, we used every coin Lord Hackerin sent us to buy these. It's the only way to get a hold of this item, with money and connection. Gatria summoned her sword and opened the crate herself. She already had an idea what's inside. She could feel it, and she was right. It was her blood that was overflowing with the essence of nature. We bought as many as we could before the kingdom started selling a diluted one. Diluted? Plume explained. After Her Highness escaped, the kingdom started diluting Her Highness's blood to make many batches for others to purchase. We believe that the royal family still had so many of them, seeing how the capital still remained a fertile land when the surrounding areas had become barren. Well, Gatria leaned forward to pick up the bottle filled with her own blood. They drained me dry for almost 2 centuries. Of course, they'll have a full stock of my blood. Plume watched in interest as the bottle in the queen's hand glowed green before the glow left the bottle and visibly seeped through the queen's skin. Soon after, every bottle in the crate was glowing, and just like the first bottle, the glow left the crate before seeping through the queen's skin. Almost instantly, Queen Gatria's complexion became better. She did not look pale anymore. It was the opposite. The queen was glowing with life. Amazing! Plume couldn't help muttering under her breath. Gatria smiled gently at Plume. It was all thanks to you and everyone helping us. Plume blushed. Queen Gatria looked so beautiful as she smiled gently. It's nothing, why, your highness. Trevin, who was silently watching on the sideline, sighed. He had known all the other queens, and there was one thing he noticed. They were charming individuals who could charm anyone without even trying, just like what's happening in front of him at the moment. I have a feeling that it wouldn't be just me and Grath traveling to Selim Kingdom after here. He took a peek at Plume. Yep, she had been charmed. Trevin subtly shook his head. How he wished he was as charming as Gatria. Trevin cleared his throat. How about we get a move on? Hearing that, Plume pulled herself together and firmly stood. I will guide you to the treasure's vault, your highness. Gatria stood up and looked at Plume. You can call me Gatria, Plume. The Plume suddenly took a knee. That would be impertinent of me, your highness. Gatria held back a smile. How about Queen Gatria? Your highness, I couldn't possibly. It's an order. Plume didn't know what to say and how to react. Trevin clicked his tongue and chided Gatria. Stop teasing her, Gatria. She's clearly flustered. Gatria finally let out a soft laughter that she had been holding back. That's why she's fun to tease, Trev. Trevin sighed and turned to Plume. She's just teasing you, Lady Plume. It's her hobby, don't mind her. Plume's lips parted in shock. Gatria then apologetically smiled at Plume. I was serious when I told you to call me Gatria, though. I mean, the Ither Kingdom was long gone. The queen before my name is just an empty title, really. There's no way, Plume passionately spoke. With kingdom or not, the Ither's queens will always be queens in our heart and soul. Agatria's smile widened. Should I steal you from Solal? Huh? Since Solal had the elf Sierra already, she wouldn't mind if I take the phoenix Plume for myself, no? I think it would be a fair exchange. Plume had no idea what the queen was talking about. Let's just go, said Trevin before turning to Gatria. Looks like you're back in good shape if you have time to tease Lady Plume. Agatria nodded at Trevin before looking down at the crate. Yes, it was a big help. That's good, let's go then. Plume moved to the front. The flustered Plume was gone. I will lead you to the treasure vault, Your Highness, Lord Trevin. There will tons of guards, said Plume as they all stepped out of the room and turned to Trevin. Lord Trevin, do you think you could turn invisible again? Trevin was about to nod, but Gatria's voice reached their ears. No, he couldn't. Trevin looked at Gatria, who had summoned a sword for each hand, and added, and he doesn't need to. I'll take care of the guards, just guide us there. Plume glanced at Trevin as if asking for help to stop the mistress of nature, but the response Trevin showed was crushing the crystal in his hand and surrounding the three of them with his shield. Don't overdo it, Trevin told Gatria. Gatria's eyes became razor-sharp as she tightened her hold on her swords. She was confident to run wild. Why? Because not only was she wearing a cloak, but her essence had also been replenished. And she would never be satisfied unless she destroyed this damn kingdom with her own hands. Remembering her suffering in her underground prison, Gatria took a step forward. Let's go. Plume was in the front, Gatria was behind her while Trevin was on the rear. Guards, Plume muttered in a low voice when they took a left turn. Plume was about to unsheath her broadsword when the mistress of nature ran past her, wielding her dual sword. Plume didn't mean to, but she couldn't help but stop on her track and watch Queen Gatria fight. The queen looked like she was a dancing sword goddess as she easily cut down the guards. Plume flinched when she saw the queen looking at her. Her green eyes were asking where to turn next. Plume hurriedly spoke. Right, Your Highness. Without waiting for them, Gatria turned right, and all Plume and Trevin could hear, who were running after the mistress of nature, were loud grunts and thuds from the guards' bodies falling one after another from Gatria's sword. I don't know what to say. Plume gawked at the deaths the mistress of nature who represents life caused. Trevin sighed. Let's continue, Lady Plume. Why yes, Plume stuttered before telling the queen where to turn next. Gatria continued her onslaught. Right staircase. The trio reached a large hall with a few doors connecting to different places of the palace. Plume was about to tell the queen which door to take when she was suddenly pulled back, and the place she was standing on just a few seconds ago now had a flaming sword buried on the floor. Plume's eyes widened. She was too focused on hurriedly guiding Queen Gatria that she became unaware of her surroundings. That was dangerous. Plume heard the voice behind her. She looked back over her shoulder. It was Lord Trevin, and he had a wry smile while scratching his cheek. Trevin was now experiencing the drawback of his arcane weapon's invincibility ability. He was not in a good shape for using it, and it's now only him and his arcane weapon, the Soul Shard, as well. His shield that could have blocked the flaming sword with no issue now couldn't because it had been exhausted. Ah, fuck. He swore as he watched Gatria being surrounded by palace guards and the owner of that flaming sword, General Bellows Aragon. He was part of the list of strong individuals who could be a threat to them that Gatria's group received. I know that something is not right with you, a traitor. General Aragon sneered at Plume, who was not at all affected by that sneer. She was a phoenix, and to her, the flame General Aragon used was a puny flame. She may not be able to defeat him with sword fight, but she was certain she could burn him. Plume took a step forward. Your Highness, leave him to me. Ugh. A General Aragon laughed at Plume's words before turning to face the woman covered with a cloak from head to toe. Her Highness? His voice sounded mocking. You must be the mistress of nature that escaped her prison like a rat. You know you look better in chains, Your Highness. Plume was enraged, but before she could attack, Trevin stopped her. Don't, Lady Plume, you'll die. Plume's wide eyes were asking Trevin for an explanation, and Trevin gave it to her. Egatria is about to go wild. In that state, she wouldn't recognize if you're a friend or foe. We were waiting for you, Your Highness. General Aragon continued to speak in a mocking tone. And tonight, while I was talking toward my chamber, I smelled blood. I sent word to everyone before following the scent of blood, and here I am. He grinned and pointed his flaming sword at Gatria. The records say Her Highness is good with the sword, and I guess you are since you're wielding too, but is that really the reason? Commander Aragon's malicious grin widened. Or maybe it's because you couldn't use your essence. You're surrounded by moonlight stones after all, your weakness. He then proceeded to laugh. Only after the general sobered up did Gatria make a sound. It was a loud sigh that sounded more like a scoff. Me, good with sword. Slowly, the hood of Gatria's cloak fell back, showing her beautiful, wicked, and vindictive smiling face. You're a funny human. The guards surrounding Gatria gulped and wanted to step back when they saw her smile. It was a terrifying smile that promised a painful death to everyone who saw it, and the guards weren't wrong. Gatria, who was looking at the general with amused gaze, raised both her hands to the side, showing her swords that gleamed in the darkness. General Aragon held his swords in both hands while in a fighting stance, ready to attack or defend. Flame danced around his sword. There was no doubt in his mind that he'd win. Not only he was skilled in sword and flame sorcery, but they were also surrounded by moonlight stones. General Aragon grinned and introduced himself like a warrior before the fight. I am Bellows Aragon, General of the Kingdom of Tretera. They call me Flame Sword Sorcerer. It was only natural that General Aragon got a response since it was a warrior's introduction before the fight, but what he get was a condescending stare with an eyes that were clearly looking down on him. And it was a gaze of someone who had reached the apex of strength toward someone puny. Then the mistress of nature's voice reached the general. My name is very precious, you see. Gatria showed a sardonic, mocking smile. Someone worthless like you don't deserve to hear it. You, the general seethed in anger. His pride couldn't take the gaze and words. How dare you? He then shouted at the guards surrounding them. Move away, she's mine to kill. All the guards happily stepped back, not because it was an order from the general, but because they wanted to continue living. General Aragon attacked the mistress of nature with his flaming sword, but was easily repelled. He attacked again and again, combining his sword skill and flame sorcerer's ability, but the mistress of nature easily parried and evaded his every attack. What the fuck is happening? A General Aragon screamed before backing away to ready another attack. Duns. Agatria's belittling eyes curved into a smile. My turn then, CECDLIBCC.